Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of upcoming episode of Soul Land 2 based on novel. So let's start. The Snow Empress said, the formation of any manifold mysterious ice cavern is a gift of nature. This one is no exception. However, it's a pity that it wasn't in the extreme north. The temperature of the outside world can't sustain the development of this manifold mysterious ice cavern. Otherwise, more ice essence might form in a few years as long as we leave some behind. If I'm not wrong, this ice cavern should have been moved here as the Earth's crust changed. It shouldn't have formed here. Even if we don't take all this ice essence away, it will slowly disappear as the outside temperature changes. Without the manifold mysterious ice essence and divine ice crystals, this place will vanish completely soon. Hui Yuhao nodded and said, this is a miracle of the Creator. I'm already very satisfied. The Snow Empress glanced at him and said, leave this place. In this period of time, you must place more of your attention and energy on understanding the mysteries of ultimate ice and the intrinsic nature of ice. Yes. The Snow Empress sprang up and flew towards Hui Yuhao. In the past, Hui Yuhao didn't have any sort of feeling when that happened. After all, the Snow Lady was only a little girl then. However, she had regained her former look now. She was already very ravishing, and looked out of this world. As she flew, she was like a fairy. Even the determined Hui Yuhao couldn't help but be slightly stunned. The Snow Lady waved her hands, blocking his vision. Immediately after this, she turned into a streak of flowing light, and fused into his body. Hui Yuhao didn't stay any longer. He made his way into the spring before swimming out. The icy spring outside was still cold, but it was a little different from before. It had lost some of its intrinsic nature, and wasn't able to pose any threat to Hui Yuhao. Nan Shueishui and Nan Qiuqiu were waiting very anxiously outside. Nan Shueishui had even tried diving in once, but the temperature was simply too low. She had no choice but to give up and wait outside. When Hui Yuhao reappeared, he was immediately reprimanded by Nan Qiuqiu. He could only smile as he looked back at her. Yuhao, what's your plan? Nan Shueishui asked Hui Yuhao. Hui Yuhao said, I still have to go to one place and help eldest senior find something. At the same time, I'll need to go take a look at Big Mao and Second Mao. I want to go too. Nan Qiuqiu immediately said. Hui Yuhao replied, Qiuqiu, don't go. Auntie wants to move all the remaining stuff from the Earth Dragon sect over. Help her. I'll go and return quickly. It won't take too long. That place is already occupied the Sun Moon Empire. It might be dangerous. I'm not afraid of danger. Nan Qiuqiu immediately responded. Hui Yuhao smiled and said, I'm afraid even if you're not. If you're hurt, how can I account to Auntie? Nan Qiuqiu snorted and said, stop it. You just want to get away from me. Don't think I don't know that. No, I have to go. Hui Yuhao was a little helpless as he said, Qiuqiu. She turned her head around and ignored him. Nan Shueishui was grinning at one side, not uttering a single sound. As an elder, she wasn't willing to intervene in the matters of young people. Furthermore, she could tell that her daughter didn't stand a chance with Hui Yuhao even though she wanted to help her. If she tried to blindly help her daughter at one side, she might even catalyze the opposite effect. It was fine just letting Nan Qiuqiu speak for herself. Hui Yuhao replied, all right then. We'll go together. However, you must listen to me. Entering the Sun Moon Empire's territories now isn't the same as before. If we encounter enemies, you must never be impulsive. I'll listen to you. Nan Qiuqiu's anger turned to delight, and she reacted cheerfully to his words. Hui Yuhao said, "Have some rest tonight first. We'll set off tomorrow morning." Okay. Nan Qiuqiu acknowledged readily. The three returned to the cloth shop, as they silently left the original address of the Earth Dragon sect. Although the backyard of the cloth shop wasn't very large, it was still possible for them to allocate a room to Hui Yuhao, while Nan Qiuqiu slept with her mother. After he was given his accommodations, Hui Yuhao immediately entered his room and told Nan Qiuqiu not to disturb him. He was not going to eat dinner, and was prepared to retreat in his room until the next morning. He had just fused a lot of manifold mysterious ice essence into his body. The faster he absorbed the ice essence, the faster his cultivation would grow. Of course, he wasn't willing to give up on this opportunity. He sat cross-legged on his bed and shut his eyes. His soul power circulated in his body as he started to cultivate. After leaving the manifold mysterious ice cavern, he managed to discover what his problem was immediately during this session of cultivation. As he had fused with a huge amount of manifold mysterious ice essence, which had formed ice flows, his soul power was moving much slower as it circulated. Although this wouldn't affect him in a fight, he would still take a long time to absorb all the manifold mysterious ice essence, given the speed of his soul power circulation. Hui Yuhao didn't dare to blindly increase the speed of his soul power circulation. He was afraid that the ice flows would harm his body. He could only take it slower. As he thought, he initiated the circulation of his soul power, and also divided a part of his attention to his soul core in his Eye of Destiny. Within his soul core, the compressed space was filled with immense spiritual power. A huge amount of spiritual power surged out under his command and fused into his passageways. His spiritual power fused with his ultimate ice soul power. This was the benefit of having great spiritual power. Even when he didn't unleash his spirit eyes, his spiritual power was still at the standard of a titled Doluo. After his spiritual power fused with his ultimate ice soul power, he didn't increase the circulation speed of his soul power. Instead, he relied on his spiritual power to gather all the ice in his soul power. Slowly, he was changing the form of his soul power. If the ice essence was separated in his soul power, blindly increasing the circulation speed of his soul power could harm his passageways. However, if the ice essence formed a thin line under the effect of his spiritual power, and was then engulfed by his ultimate ice soul power, what would happen? The problem was immediately solved. When Hui Yuhao tried to perform such a combination, the Snow Empress was in awe in his spiritual sea. This wasn't something a normal seven-ringed soul master could control. Even some titled Doluo couldn't do this. However, Hui Yuhao relied on his soul core, an immense spiritual power to do it. It took him a full 4 hours before he completed this combination, and smoothed out the flow of his soul power. With sufficient spiritual power to control it, he was afraid of changes to his soul power. In such a state, he wouldn't be affected whether he was cultivating, or directly using his soul power to fight. He recirculated his soul power according to the trajectory of his mysterious heaven technique. Under the fusion and protection of his spiritual power, Hui Yuhao's soul power circulated faster and faster. Very soon, he understood why the Ice Empress was so obsessed and in awe of the manifold mysterious ice essence. In just one major circulation, Hui Yuhao could already sense an improvement in his soul power. At the very least, it was comparable to the results he normally obtained from days of cultivation. What was even more impressive was that his ultimate ice had grown stronger. This meant the temperature of his ultimate ice soul power was even lower now. It was also much purer. Even his life energy had grown stronger as a result. His passageways and bones were also strengthened under the nourishment of the manifold mysterious ice essence. It's indeed very strong. Hui Yuhao was delighted, and immediately continued to cultivate without any hesitation. His soul power had reached rank 74. After absorbing the ice essence, Hu Yuhao sensed that his soul power had reached rank 75. If he continued in this manner, his soul power would be bound to increase further and further. This opportunity that Nan Shui Shui had brought to him was indeed very rare. He performed more and more major circulations of his soul power, and slowly lost track of time. His soul power was filtered and purified. Furthermore, his soul power wasn't the only thing absorbing the ice essence. His body, bones, passageways and organs were also absorbing this treasure. The energy from the 6 pillars of manifold mysterious ice essence was slowly being absorbed into his body. His abilities were also slowly increasing. Hu Yuhao only stopped when he sensed that his soul power was already greatly nourished, and he needed some time to adapt to the changes. As he opened his eyes, Hu Yuhao let out a long breath. A white mist was released from his mouth, and the entire room was instantly covered in a layer of frost. It was a magical feeling. Hu Yuhao was very awed in his heart. His soul power circulated like mercury, it was gentle and heavy, yet it ran smoothly. With every movement he took, his soul power would surge. He was even more surprised by the fact that his soul power seemed to have gained a greater connection with the origin energy in the air. This meant that not only could he adjust his soul power in a fight, but he could also better guide the origin energy in the air for his own use. He drifted up and took a look outside. The sky was still bright outside, but he was shocked to learn how long he had spent cultivating. Surely it's not morning, is it? As he pushed his door open and walked out, Hu Yuhao immediately saw Nan Qiuqiu, who was supposed to be guarding his door, but was dozing off right now. A warm feeling surged through his heart. Without a doubt, Nan Qiuqiu was here to protect him. Qiuqiu. Hu Yuhao squatted down beside Nan Qiuqiu and called softly. Oh? Nan Qiuqiu was immediately jolted awake. She heaved a sigh of relief when she turned her head and saw that it was Hu Yuhao. She was surprised as she asked, "You're awake? You're finally awake. You said it was going to be one night, but 7 days have already passed. How ridiculous can you get?" Hu Yuhao was apologetic as he said, "I'm sorry. I couldn't stop myself after going into cultivation. I only just woke up." Nan Qiuqiu was speechless, and silently thought to herself, "It's already very difficult for me to enter deep meditation, but this guy can do so at any time and anywhere he wants. It's really frustrating." "All right. It's good that you're awake. How's it? What have you gained?" Hu Yuhao replied, "My soul power should have improved. I feel good. This is all because of Auntie. I have gained significant rewards from my venture into the Earth Dragon's sect secret location this time. In the depths of that cold spring, there was something called manifold mysterious ice essence. For soul masters like me that cultivate ultimate ice, it's extremely helpful. This is why I've benefited greatly this time." Nan Qiuqiu said, "That's great then. Talking about it, thanks for the last time." Hu Yuhao was a little perplexed as he asked, "Thanks? What's there to thank me for?" "Thanks for abusing me," Nan Qiuqiu snapped. Hu Yuhao was confused as he asked, "What? Abusing you? What are you talking about?" Nan Qiuqiu snorted and replied, "You're really so forgetful. Have you forgotten that you used your spiritual power to exert pressure on me? I didn't have any feeling when I woke up the second day, but I've regained some sensation over the past few days. My spiritual control seems to have strengthened. It must be your doing. That's why I'm thanking you." Hu Yuhao smiled and said, "I took 7 days during my deep meditation this time. What has happened in the outside world?" After hearing his question, Nan Qiuqiu straightened her face and nodded before replying, "For some unknown reason, the Sun Moon Empire brought a legion of troops and stationed them outside Dragon City. A legion of troops. Hui Yuhao was also astonished. Dragon City was basically the most northern part of the Heavenly Soul Empire, and it was also the largest city in the northeast of the Heavenly Soul Empire. Why did the Sun Moon Empire send troops here? Moving east from here, it'll already be the Do Ling Empire. Don't tell me they're making their move on the Do Ling Empire before they've even occupied the entirety of the Heavenly Soul Empire. How many of them are there? Are there soul engineers? Hui Yuhao asked. Nan Qiuqiu shook her head and answered, I'm not clear on the details yet. My mother and I are afraid that the other party has soul detectors. This is why we only watched from afar and didn't dare to get too close. However, the troops appear to be very orderly, and there's at least 20,000 of them. I'm not sure if there are soul engineers. There should be some. Even a normal legion of the Sun Moon Empire will have some soul engineers to perform surveillance and aid the rest of the legion. Hui Yuhao nodded and said, since it's so timely, I'll go take a look too. I'll go see what their plan is, and send a message to the Heavenly Soul Empire and Do Ling Empire. All right. We'll leave after you finish checking them out. Hui Yuhao answered, yes. We'll see how it goes. Although there are only 20,000 people in this legion, their fighting strength will be fairly great if they are a Soul Engineer Legion. I'll need to find out their motives first before we talk about anything else. All right. I knew that you weren't reliable. Nan Qiuqiu twisted her lips. Hui Yuhao was helpless as he smiled. I'm hungry, Qiuqiu. When Hui Yuhao woke up from his cultivation, it was already noontime. Even he didn't know how much his soul power had increased. It was at least rank 75 or 76. He was fairly confident about this. Otherwise, he would have absorbed all the manifold mysterious ice essence for nothing. After having some food, he silently left the city. Even though nighttime was the best time for him to perform his surveillance, he still had to get a grip on what was going on first. Nan Shueishui was no longer in Dragon City. She had left Nan Qiuqiu behind to protect Hui Yuhao and left for Shrek Academy with the last batch of resources from the Earth Dragon sect. Regarding Hui Yuhao, she was very relieved. In Dragon City, there was hardly anyone who could threaten him, given his cultivation. The gates of the Earth Dragon sect weren't sealed just because of the arrival of troops. It was just the same as it was when Hui Yuhao first came. According to Nan Qiuqiu, this Sun Moon Empire Legion was stationed outside the city. As for their motive, it was unclear. Hui Yuhao changed into an ordinary cloth shirt and used his imitation to slightly change his appearance. He now looked like an ordinary person and snuck out of the city. To prevent drawing attention to himself, he didn't leave the city through the northern city gate. Instead, he left from the eastern city gate. After leaving the city, he made his way to the northern city gate. He unleashed his spiritual detection and started to scan the air. Very soon, Hui Yuhao discovered that the number of aerial surveillance soul tools in the sky above the northern city gates had greatly increased. Just by simply scanning around, Hui Yuhao was astonished to discover that the number of aerial surveillance soul tools outside the northern city gate was more than 100. It seemed like there was a Soul Engineer Legion within this regular legion. Otherwise, there wouldn't be so many soul tools. After discovering this, Hui Yuhao was even more determined to carry out surveillance. He quickly shifted his attention to the northern city gate. Around 5 to 6 kilometers from the northern city gate, Hui Yuhao made his way into a patch of forest. From the fact that there was a forest outside the city, it was evident that Dragon City was a city that hardly had any wars. Normally, huge cities wouldn't have any forests at all for dozens of kilometers around. There wouldn't be a barrier blocking the view from the city like this forest. Hu Yuhao wasn't anxious at all as he peered into the sky. He was only going to carry out surveillance when night fell. Those aerial surveillance soul tools hadn't detected him at all. After his soul core formed, Hu Yuhao's spiritual power grew by another tier. Not only was it stronger, but it was also able to recover much faster. Even when he unleashed his imitation using his Eye of Destiny, he was still able to last for a long time. Now that he had completed this round of deep meditation, his understanding of the origins of ice was much deeper too. His control over his own temperature was much stronger than before. Apart from oscillation detectors, there weren't any soul tools that could detect his presence. No matter how tight the defense of this legion, it couldn't possibly compare to that of the Mingdo mountain range with the death god around. After cultivating for some time, the sky had already slightly turned darker. From afar, smoke could be seen rising, indicating that the Sun-Moon Empire's troops were cooking. It was time for dinner. Hu Yuhao didn't continue waiting. The change in the color of the sky and the rest that the troopers were taking during dinner was a rather good opportunity for him to carry out his surveillance. He silently left the forest and fully unleashed his imitation. He seemed to have fully fused into the air as he rapidly came closer to the northern city gates. His spiritual power fanned out towards the military base at the northern city gates. Hu Yuhao wasn't even very afraid of oscillation detectors, since the effective range of any oscillation detector couldn't compare to his spiritual detection. This was why he could avoid the oscillation detectors after performing his surveillance. The spiritual barrier that the death god Doluo could unleash wasn't something that was found everywhere. If there was one here, he would consider himself unlucky. Very soon, Hu Yuhao discovered the positions of some oscillation detectors and noted them in his mind. At the same time, he also discovered that the troops were indeed as orderly as Nan Chocho had mentioned. Even though it was already dinner time, patrolling, surveillance and scouting was still being carried out diligently. Hu Yuhao's spiritual power extended into the military base. Very soon, he found some tents that were different from the others. These tents were much smaller than the tents at the perimeter of the base. Each tent was roughly 5 to 6 square meters in size. For tents of such size, it was evident that they were only meant for single individuals. However, the quality of these tents was far superior to the tents on the perimeter. They were actually made of mature leather. Such leather was very tough. By applying wood oil to it, it was able to repel water and fire. These tents were definitely top quality. Hu Yuhao wasn't surprised by their presence. However, he discovered that there were several hundreds of such tents when he scanned the camp with his spiritual detection. They were neatly arranged, and they were all dark red. There were even dim golden patterns on these tents. Observing more closely, Hu Yuhao discovered that these patterns were actually images of phoenixes. He was shocked when he saw until here. He could roughly guess at the core of this legion now. In the Sun-Moon Empire, there were 5 strong Soul Engineer legions. Among them, the Sun-Moon Imperial Soul Engineer Legion was the strongest, followed by the other 4 Beast Lord-ranked Soul Engineer legions. Together, they formed the hand that protects the nation. Hu Yuhao had faced Wang Yiheng's Evil Tyrant Legion the most. Wang Yiheng had even perished under his and his partner's hands. From how this Soul Engineer Legion was equipped, it was likely that it was another one of the Beast Lord rank Soul Engineer Legions, the Phoenix Soul Engineer Legion. Among all of the Sun-Moon Empire Soul Engineer Legions, it was ranked within the top 3. Why are they here? Don't tell me that they are really here to invade the Douling Empire. However, Hu Yuhao discovered some problems as he scanned the camp with his spiritual detection. Although this military base followed a very strict formation, there weren't any soul formations present. This meant that this Soul Engineer Legion had no plans to fight. In that case, their true motive was a big question mark. It would have been fine if he didn't encounter them. However, now that he had to find out what they were up to. As he thought until here, Hu Yuhao exploited the darkness and rapidly snuck into the base. He circumvented a few oscillation detectors and made his way deep into the base. The rations of this army were rather good. Hu Yuhao could immediately smell meat soup not long after he entered. Some soldiers were already holding bowls in their hands and walking towards the mess areas. However, there was hardly anyone joking around. Even when they spoke to one another, they whispered. The quality of such an army might compare to that of the White Tiger Duke's army. A 20,000-men army was already considered rather large. Nan Qiuqiu's estimation was accurate. After Hu Yuhao used his spiritual detection to scan the place, he could basically confirm that the size of the army was between 20 to 25,000 men. He continued to advance further in. He moved his way past the tents at the perimeter and got closer to the dark red tents. At the same time, he strengthened his spiritual detection and sensed any changes that could occur around him. If this were an ordinary army, they couldn't possibly threaten Hu Yuhao. However, things were different with the presence of the Phoenix Soul Engineer Legion. There had to be a Class 9 Soul Engineer in this Soul Engineer Legion. Furthermore, the strategy of such an advanced tier Soul Engineer Legion could threaten a titled Doluor, much less Hu Yuhao. This was why he had to be careful. As he moved forward, he discovered through his spiritual detection that there was a huge tent in the center of all the tents. It was also dark red, but it was as large as the commander's tent. There were even obvious golden phoenix images on it. It was extremely crowded inside this tent. What left Hu Yuhao the most shocked was that he sensed something wrong just as his spiritual detection came closer to the tent. He immediately stopped his detection. This was because he discovered spiritual barrier around it. If not for the fact that he had just formed his soul core, and the sensitivity of his spiritual detection had increased significantly, he wouldn't have discovered the presence of this spiritual barrier. If he had tried to probe further in, he would have likely been discovered. No wonder it was a Beast Lord-ranked Soul Engineer Legion. The defense of the commander's tent was extremely tight, there was even a spiritual barrier around it. Hu Yuhao was naturally not disappointed because of that. He silently inched forward and came closer and closer to the tent. It was only by getting close to it could he obtain the most reliable information. At the same time, his spiritual power also entered the rest of the other tents for detection purposes. The members of this Soul Engineer Legion were indeed all female soul engineers. Furthermore, their cultivations were quite strong too. They all possessed at least 4 soul rings. Some of them even possessed 5 or 6 soul rings. In the slightly bigger dark red tents, there were even 7-ringed soul engineers. Such soul engineers were considered quite strong. As he inched forward, Hu Yuhao circumvented a few more oscillation detectors. Finally, he stopped 30 meters away from that huge tent. This was the furthest he could go, given the presence of the spiritual barrier. If he moved any further forward, he would most certainly be discovered. I can't go any closer, or I'll be discovered. However, I can't get any reliable information if I don't get closer. Hu Yuhao furrowed his brow. He found a corner and squatted down. At the same time, he unleashed his spiritual detection laterally around the commander's tent. He was trying to survey everything that was going around the tent, and waiting for his opportunity. The black soul core of his Eye of Destiny subtly appeared. His aura of destiny spread out, and Hu Yuhao shut his eyes. He sensed everything silently. Given the standard of his current spiritual power, almost the entire base was engulfed by his spiritual power apart from the commander's tent. He was definitely more effective than the aerial surveillance soul tools in the sky. However, Hu Yuhao's expression soon turned weird. The members of this Phoenix Soul Engineer Legion were all females. It was already very late. Some of the female Soul Engineers toned down on their dressing after dinner. Hui Yuhao's spiritual detection was all-engulfing. When the images of countless females dressed rather lightly entered his spiritual world, Hui Yuhao felt as if he were about to go crazy. After his expression turned momentarily weird, he started to blush. After this, he frantically retracted his spiritual detection. He only kept it in the air, stopped surveilling the conditions inside the tents. Hui Yuhao heaved a sigh of relief when he could no longer sense their bodies. He continued to look towards the commander's tent, and silently waited for his opportunity. Although there was a spiritual barrier blocking him here, he didn't believe that he didn't stand a chance at all. Dim lights flashed, and Hui Yuhao revealed an icy-cold look in his eyes. As he silently waited, he was also observing things. Very soon, his opportunity arrived. A few female Soul Engineers dressed in red armor walked towards the commander's tent. Their armor was well fitted. Evidently, it was top quality. Every one of their suits of armor was custom made. There were even buckle-like accessories and slots on them. Obviously, these slots were used to connect to different soul tools. Although these female Soul Engineers weren't particularly ravishing, they still looked like suave heroines. Very soon, they arrived in front of the commander's tent. Unlike what Hui Yuhao had feared, they walked through the spiritual barrier and into the tent as if there were nothing there. Hui Yuhao's spiritual power had engulfed everywhere else nearby. This was why he had an acute feeling of everything around him. He immediately discovered a layer of light shining from each of their bodies when they passed through the spiritual barrier. These layers of light were extremely weak, but there were obvious spiritual undulations coming from them. When they passed through the spiritual barrier, they would demonstrate their compatibility with the spiritual barrier before they managed to pass through. Impressive. Hui Yuhao was in awe. In terms of soul tool research and manufacturing, the Sun Moon Empire was indeed superior to the three empires of the original Doluo continent. This wasn't an extremely impressive piece of research, but the attention to detail was great. While this spiritual barrier didn't have any fighting use, it was still very practical. Since this was the case, these soul engineers must possess some kind of special soul tool on their bodies that could help them disperse the spiritual undulations. This meant that Hui Yuhao could sneak in with someone else if he possessed such a soul tool. That would help him avoid all the spiritual barriers. As he thought until here, Hui Yuhao started to take action. Under the surveillance of his spiritual detection, it was definitely not difficult for him to find a suitable soul engineer. Hui Yuhao quickly made his way around a few tents, while continuing to use his imitation to conceal himself. Very soon, he found a member of the Soul Engineer Legion not far from the side of the military base. To ensure that he could get what he wanted, Hui Yuhao intentionally selected a Class 4 Soul Engineer. In Hui Yuhao's eyes, a Class 4 Soul Engineer was an easy target. He crept closer and closer. Given his imitation, he wouldn't be discovered even if he got right up to his opponent's back. Hui Yuhao controlled his body temperature very well through a combination of his ice-type soul power and imitation. Very soon, he was behind that female soul engineer. He swiftly hacked at her neck with his palm. At the same time, he unleashed his spiritual interference domain and engulfed both him and the female soul engineer inside. When his palm hit her neck, he immediately discovered something amiss. A gentle yet resilient wave of soul power immediately rose. Following this, the female soul engineer's body shone with a streak of red light. The appearance of this red light was very sudden. However, the moment it appeared, a deafening alarm also immediately reverberated throughout the entire base. The red light wasn't sufficient to resist Hui Yuhao's right hand. The Class 4 Soul Engineer collapsed to the ground amidst the deafening alarm. What's going on? Not only does she have an automatic defensive soul tool on her body, but she also has an alarm-type soul tool with her. Hu Yuhao was shocked, but he didn't have time to hesitate anymore. He bent over and quickly picked the soul engineer up. He was going to flee before deciding on what to do. After being discovered by such a strong soul engineer legion, there were many methods that could be used to detect his location. However, something else caught him by surprise again. When his hands touched the unconscious female soul engineer, another layer of red light shone from her body. Following this layer of red light seemed to cause more than 10 different beams of red light around them to shine at the same time too. Not only did this red light protect this female soul engineer, but it also engulfed a large area around her. It's a linked defensive soul tool. It can still work after she's struck unconscious. Hu Yuhao was depressed. I have to go. Otherwise I'll be in trouble. He couldn't be bothered with capturing her anymore. He quickly shot up and charged out like an arrow. He was about to collide with the red lights in front of him, but he snorted coldly and lifted his left hand before smacking it in front of him. A strong sense of chill was instantly unleashed. That sense of chill was very strong when it first appeared. However, it soon toned down. However, just as the temperature turned from extremely cold to normal, the red lights in front evidently became weaker. Hu Yuhao waved his hand and unleashed the destructive strength of his dark golden terror claws. He forced open a slit in the barrier that the red lights had formed before charging out and up towards the sky. Even though he could also be detected in the air, he had no choice but to do it now. This was because there were many oscillation detectors scanning in his direction right now. Furthermore, more red lights also shone within the Phoenix Soul Engineer Legion. Hu Yuhao was secretly counting his blessings. If he were any slower, the earlier linked defensive soul formation would have become stronger, and it would have become impossible for him to escape. He would have landed in the enemy's hands. Part 1 end here.